The emergency council chamber buzzed with the nervous chatter of a dozen alien species. Admiral Kate Morrison sat at the far end of the curved table, her hands folded calmly as she watched the panic unfold around her. The holographic display in the center showed the Kepler defense line in ruins, red markers indicating where entire fleets had simply vanished under the relentless assault of the Void Syndicate. Ambassador Zethkar's scaled hands trembled as he activated his datapad. The reptilian saurian had seen many wars in his long life, but nothing like this. His golden eyes swept across the assembled delegates before settling on the human admiral. Honored council members, we face extinction. The Void forces have broken through our primary defensive line. 17 colonies have gone dark in the past week alone. High Admiral Veltar's insectoid features remained expressionless, but the rapid clicking of his mandibles betrayed his anxiety. His forearms gestured at the tactical display where blue dots representing Alliance forces grew fewer by the hour. Our conventional tactics have proven ineffective against their adaptive warfare systems. They learn from every engagement, improving. Their response is faster than we can develop countermeasures. Morrison finally spoke, her voice cutting through the alien chatter like a blade. Then perhaps it's time to consider unconventional tactics. Her steel-gray eyes fixed on each delegate in turn. My battleships are ready. The USS Defiance alone carries enough firepower to level a small moon. Give us the coordinates, and we'll end this war in a month. The chamber fell silent. Zethkar's throat sac inflated with nervous energy as he exchanged glances with the other delegates. The crystalline representative, Elder Quill Era, chimed softly, her translucent form shimmering with anxiety. Admiral Morrison, we appreciate humanity's eagerness to contribute, but your fleet will be most valuable protecting the Sol system and surrounding colonies. Morrison's jaw tightened. With respect, Elder, my ships didn't come here to sit in dock while the galaxy burns. We joined this alliance to fight alongside you, not to watch from the sidelines. Veltar's wings buzzed briefly, a sign of agitation among his species. The Council has decided that human forces will remain in reserve. Your defensive capabilities around Earth and the inner colonies are essential to our overall strategy. The human admiral's laugh was short and bitter. Defensive capabilities. Is that what you're calling it now? She stood slowly, her presence somehow filling the vast chamber despite her relatively small size compared to some of the alien delegates. Commander Sullivan, show them the latest tactical assessments. Jake Sullivan, Morrison's tactical officer, activated his own display. The young man's eager expression had grown increasingly frustrated over the past months of forced inaction. Our analysis shows that concentrated human battle groups could break the Void advance in 3 key sectors. The USS Defiance, Thunderbolt, and Retribution are specifically designed for deep space assault operations. Zethkar's scales rippled with what humans had learned to recognize as extreme discomfort. Commander Sullivan, your assessment is noted, but the Council's decision stands. Human forces will maintain their current defensive posture. Morrison's eyes narrowed. She had spent enough time among aliens to read the subtle signs of fear and deception. Something was wrong here, something beyond simple military strategy. Ambassador Zethkar, perhaps you could explain why my ships, which were instrumental in ending the Terran integration wars, are suddenly considered unsuitable for combat operations. The saurian's throat sac deflated rapidly. The integration. Wars were a topic most Alliance members preferred to forget. Humanity's entry into galactic civilization had been marked by a series of conflicts that ended not with negotiated settlements, but with the complete capitulation of their opponents. Admiral, those conflicts were different. The current situation requires a more measured approach. Sullivan leaned forward, his young face flushed with anger. Measured approach. Right. While you're measuring, entire worlds are dying. He pulled up another display showing casualty reports. The Centauri colonies have been evacuated. 3 million civilians fleeing their homes because our measured approach isn't working. Elder Quillara's crystalline form pulsed with soft light. Young human, we understand your frustration, but warfare among civilized species follows certain protocols. The Void Syndicate, despite their nature, will eventually respond to diplomatic pressure. Morrison's expression hardened. Diplomatic pressure against machines that consume organic life for fuel. I can see why that strategy has been so effective. She gathered her data pads with sharp, precise movements. When you're ready to fight a real war instead of playing galactic politics, you know where to find us. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Zethkar's voice carried a note of barely concealed desperation. Admiral Morrison, please understand. The Council's decision is final. Human battleships will not be deployed to the front lines. Morrison paused at the chamber's exit, her back still turned to the assembled delegates. Ambassador, I've been fighting wars since before some of your species achieved faster-than-light travel. I know the difference between military strategy and political maneuvering. She turned to face them one last time. When this measured approach fails, when your fleets are scattered and your worlds are burning, remember that you chose this path. The chamber doors sealed behind the departing humans, leaving the alien delegates in uncomfortable silence. The holographic display continued its grim update, red markers spreading like a plague across the galactic map. In the distance, beyond the range of their sensors, the USS Defiance completed its final systems check and awaited orders that might never come. Dr. Lisa Park stared at the alien artifact suspended in the containment field, her brown eyes reflecting the strange blue glow emanating from the crystalline structure. The fragment had been recovered from a destroyed void ship near the Vega system, one of the few pieces of their technology that hadn't self-destructed upon capture. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she ran another deep scan. Computer display neural pathway analysis, she said, pushing a strand of dark hair from her face. The results made her stomach tighten. The void technology wasn't just adaptive. It was learning at an exponential rate. Every battle fed information back to their collective consciousness, making them stronger and more efficient with each encounter. Captain Ryan Blake's voice crackled through the comm system from the destroyer USS Vigilant, currently on patrol, near the outer colonies. Dr. Park, we're seeing something strange out here. The void ships are actively avoiding our patrol routes. They'll alter course by several light years just to stay away from us. Lisa frowned at her data pad. That doesn't match their behavioral patterns from other sectors. They've been aggressive and direct in every engagement with Alliance forces. Yeah, that's what's got me puzzled, Blake replied. His destroyer was one of the newest in the human fleet, equipped with experimental stealth systems that made it nearly invisible to conventional sensors. We tracked a void convoy for 6 hours yesterday. The moment they detected our presence, they jumped to hyperspace. No attempt to engage, no reconnaissance. Just immediate retreat. Back on the Alliance capital world of New Geneva, Senator Alex Carter paced the length of his office like a caged animal. The politician's usually calm demeanor had cracked under the strain of watching his species treated like dangerous children. Through his window, he could see the massive Alliance fleet formations conducting what they called defensive maneuvers, while real battles raged across the galaxy. This is insane, he muttered, reviewing the latest casualty reports. The Proxima station had fallen 3 days ago. 15,000 military personnel and twice as many civilians were presumed dead. The Alliance response had been to hold another committee meeting to discuss strategic realignment. His aide, a young woman named Emma Ross, knocked softly before entering. Senator, you have that call with the Defense Committee in 10 minutes. They want to discuss the human fleet disposition again. Carter's jaw clenched. Let me guess. Another proposal to relocate our ships even further from the combat zones. Maybe they'd like us to pull back to the Alpha Centauri system. or better. Yet, why don't we just park the entire fleet in Earth orbit and promise not to come out until the grown-ups are finished playing war? Emma's expression was sympathetic but worried. Sir, I've been monitoring the intelligence reports. There's something the Alliance leadership isn't telling us about their decision to keep our forces in reserve. Before Carter could respond, his communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. The holographic display materialized to show Dr. Park's concerned face. Senator Carter, I need to speak with you immediately. It's about the void technology analysis. Go ahead, Doctor. Emma has security clearance. Lisa's image flickered as she checked her surroundings before continuing. The Void Syndicate has been collecting data on every species they've encountered. Their technology adapts not just to weapons and tactics, but to fundamental psychological and biological patterns. They build detailed profiles of how different species think and fight. Carter leaned forward. And they have almost no data on human combat patterns. Their files show extensive analysis of Saurian defensive strategies, Zephyrian swarm tactics, crystalline energy manipulation techniques, but the human entries are practically empty. A few scattered reports from border skirmishes during the integration wars, and nothing since. The implications hit Carter like a physical blow. They're afraid of what they don't understand. More than that, Lisa continued, I've been analyzing their retreat patterns. They're not just avoiding human ships randomly. They're maintaining what they call uncertainty buffers around any zone where human forces might be deployed. Their tactical algorithms can't predict our behavior, so they're treating us as an unknown variable. Meanwhile, millions of light-years away, Prime Nexus 7 processed the latest tactical reports from its fleet commanders. The artificial intelligence that served as the Void Syndicate's primary strategic coordinator had consumed the knowledge of hundreds of species over the past millennium. Each organic race followed predictable patterns, their military doctrines shaped by biology, culture, and evolutionary psychology. But the humans remained an enigma. Prime Nexus 7's vast databases contained detailed psychological profiles of every major Alliance species. It knew that Saurians would retreat when casualties exceeded 12%. Zephyrians became increasingly aggressive when defending their nesting worlds. Crystalline beings prioritized the preservation of their memory cores above all tactical considerations. The human files were frustratingly sparse. Reports from the integration wars described tactics that defied conventional military logic. Human forces had been observed sacrificing entire battle groups to achieve minor tactical advantages. They showed no regard for acceptable casualty ratios. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to treat warfare not as a political tool, but as an existential struggle where any action was justified by victory. Prime Nexus 7 issued new directives to its fleet commanders. Maintain minimum safe distances from human-controlled space. Avoid engagement with human vessels unless absolutely necessary. Monitor their movements, but do not provoke direct confrontation until a complete behavioral analysis could be completed. Back aboard the USS Vigilant, Captain Blake reviewed the encrypted message he'd just received from Admiral Morrison. The orders were simple but telling. Begin extended reconnaissance of void movements. Document their tactical responses. Prepare contingency plans for immediate deployment to combat zones. Reading between the lines, Blake understood what Morrison was really saying. The Admiral wasn't accepting the Alliance's decision to sideline human forces. She was preparing for the moment when desperate circumstances would force their hand. Blake looked out at the stars where distant flashes of light marked ongoing battles. Somewhere out there, brave Alliance crews were dying while politicians debated, and committees met. He thought about the experimental weapon systems locked away in his ship's armory, weapons that violated half a dozen galactic warfare conventions. Helm, set course for the Kepler sector, he ordered. Let's see what all the fuss is about. General Sam Torres stood in the armory of the USS Thunderbolt, watching his Marines conduct equipment checks with the precision of professionals who knew their skills might never be tested in battle. The massive battleship's weapons bay stretched for nearly a kilometer, filled with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. But despite their overwhelming capability, they remained anchored in the Sol system while the war raged beyond their reach. "Sir?" called Sergeant Maria Valdez, her voice echoing off the armored bulkheads. "The new boarding pods are ready for final inspection." She gestured toward a row of sleek black vehicles that looked more like missiles than transport craft. Each pod was designed to punch through enemy hull armor and deploy a full squad of Marines directly into hostile territory. Torres nodded grimly. The boarding pods were a uniquely human innovation, born from humanity's willingness to engage in the kind of close-quarters combat that most civilized species found abhorrent. While other races preferred to destroy enemy vessels from a safe distance, humans had developed tactics for capturing ships intact, along with their crews and technology. "How are the boys holding up?" Torres asked, watching a group of young Marines practice with their assault rifles in the zero-gravity training chamber. "They're frustrated, sir," Valdez replied honestly. "They joined up to fight the good fight, not to sit around polishing equipment while people die." She lowered her voice. "Some of them are talking about requesting transfers to Alliance Marine units. At least they're seeing action." The general's weathered face hardened. He'd served in 3 wars before this one, including the brutal integration, conflicts that had established humanity's place in galactic society. The idea of his Marines serving under alien commanders who didn't understand human capabilities made his blood boil. Lieutenant Amy Foster adjusted her fighter's targeting system for the 100th time that week, her hands moving with the automatic. Precision of someone who had nothing better to do than maintain already perfect equipment. Through the cockpit of her interceptor, she could see the rest of her squadron conducting another training exercise in the asteroid belt beyond Mars. "Blue, leader to control," she said into her comm system. "Request permission to extend patrol range to the Kepler sector. We're picking up distress signals on the emergency frequencies." The response was immediate and predictable. "Negative, Blue Leader. Maintain current patrol parameters. Those signals are outside your authorized operational zone." Amy's grip tightened on her flight controls. The distress signals had been coming in for days, desperate Alliance crews calling for help as they faced impossible odds against Void forces. Her fighter squadron was faster and more maneuverable than anything in the Alliance fleet, equipped with weapons systems that could punch through Void armor like tissue paper. But instead of rushing to help, they were ordered to practice formations around empty space. "Blue 2 to Blue Leader," came the voice of her wingman, Lieutenant Tony Martinez. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the direction of Altair. Looks like a major engagement." Amy checked her long-range sensors and felt her heart sink. The energy patterns were consistent with a full-scale battle, probably involving hundreds of ships. Alliance forces were fighting and dying while she flew, in circles around a piece of space rock. Captain Nick Harper moved through the corridors of his ship like a ghost, his footsteps silent on the deck plating. The USS Phantom was humanity's most advanced stealth vessel, capable of remaining undetected even at close range. His crew had perfected techniques for infiltration and sabotage that would make other species question humanity's commitment to civilized warfare. "Captain," whispered his sensor operator, a soft-spoken woman named Beth Clark. "We're detecting void communication traffic from the Proxima system. Heavy encryption, but we're picking up tactical data streams." Harper studied the readings with professional interest. The Void forces were coordinating a massive assault on the Centauri colonies, their communications revealing deployment patterns and strategic objectives. With this intelligence, Alliance forces could prepare effective countermeasures. But Harper's orders were clear: observe and report only. No direct action. "Can we jam their communications?" he asked quietly. Clark's fingers hovered over her console. "Easily, sir. We could disrupt their entire command network with minimal risk of detection." Harper's jaw clenched. His ship carried weapons and systems that violated several galactic conventions regarding stealth warfare. Human military doctrine had always emphasized the importance of information warfare and psychological operations, tactics that other species considered dishonorable or barbaric. Deep in the Alliance archives on New Geneva, Elder Quillara accessed files that had been sealed since the end of the Integration Wars. Her crystalline form pulsed with troubled light as she reviewed records of human military operations. The reports made for disturbing reading, filled with accounts of tactics that defied all conventional understanding of civilized warfare. The siege of Kepler Prime was particularly troubling. Human forces had surrounded the heavily fortified Zephyrian stronghold and waited. Not for reinforcements or better weapons, but for winter. They had calculated that the defenders would run out of food before spring, and had simply maintained their blockade while an entire population slowly starved. When the Zephyrians finally surrendered, they had been so psychologically broken that resistance collapsed across their entire sector. Then there was the Battle of Vega Station, where human commanders had deliberately sacrificed a third of their fleet to destroy a single enemy command ship. The tactical advantage gained was minimal, but the psychological impact on their opponents had been devastating. Enemy forces had become reluctant to engage, always wondering what seemingly suicidal tactic the humans might employ next. Elder Quilara's form dimmed as she closed the files. The current council's decision to keep human forces in reserve wasn't based on military strategy. It was based on fear. Fear that once unleashed, human warfare would prove too brutal, too uncompromising for the galaxy to accept. But as she reviewed the latest casualty reports from the front lines, Quilara began to wonder if their fear of human methods was becoming more dangerous than the threat they were designed to counter. The Void Syndicate was winning, and conventional tactics were proving inadequate. Back aboard the USS Thunderbolt, General Torres received a coded message from Admiral Morrison. The text was brief and carefully worded, but the meaning was clear. Begin preparation for immediate deployment. Load all tactical gear. Prepare for extended operations away from base. Torres smiled for the first time in weeks as he began issuing orders to his staff. Whatever was coming, his Marines would be ready. The emergency alert klaxons aboard Admiral Morrison's flagship screamed through the corridors like wounded animals. She rushed onto the bridge of the USS Indomitable to find her crew staring at displays showing the unthinkable. New Geneva, the Alliance capital world, was under direct assault by the largest void fleet ever assembled. "Report!" Morrison barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Commander Jake Sullivan's face was pale as he read from his tactical display. "Void forces jumped directly into the New Geneva system 40 minutes ago. Over 3,000 ships, including multiple command vessels we've never seen before. Alliance home fleet is engaging, but they're outnumbered 10-1. Morrison's steel-gray eyes locked onto the strategic display where blue dots representing Alliance ships were winking out of existence with terrifying regularity. The enemy had bypassed 3 defensive lines to strike directly at the heart of galactic civilization. It was a bold move that revealed either desperate confidence or absolute certainty of victory. "Any word from Alliance Command?" she asked. Sullivan handed her a data pad with a message that had arrived just minutes earlier. The encryption was basic, suggesting it had been sent in haste. Morrison's expression grew grim as she read the desperate plea hidden within formal military language. High Admiral Veltar was requesting immediate assistance from any available human forces. "Ma'am," interrupted her communications officer, a young woman named Carol Webb. "We're receiving similar messages from fleet commanders across the front lines. The Void offensive isn't limited to New Geneva. They're attacking on 17 different fronts simultaneously." Morrison studied the tactical overview, her mind already calculating response times and deployment options. The Void Syndicate had been gathering intelligence for months, preparing for this moment when they could strike everywhere at once. They had learned enough about Alliance tactics to predict response patterns, but they had underestimated one crucial factor. "Signal all human vessels," Morrison ordered. her voice carrying the authority of someone who had made an irrevocable decision. Code Black Authorization. All ships are to prepare for immediate deployment to combat zones. We're going to VA. Captain Owen Mitchell received Morrison's signal aboard the battleship USS Retribution and felt a savage smile spread across his weathered face. His ship had been built for one purpose: to destroy enemy vessels through overwhelming firepower and aggressive tactics. For months, he had watched from the sidelines as Alliance forces fought with what he considered suicidal restraint. Weapons status, he called to his crew. Commander Luke Perry, his chief weapons officer, responded with barely contained enthusiasm. All systems operational, sir. Plasma cannons are charged and ready. Torpedo tubes loaded with the new Mark 7. Warheads. Perry paused, his expression becoming more serious. Sir, should we load the Mark 10s? Mitchell considered the question carefully. The Mark 10 torpedoes were classified weapons that violated 3 separate galactic warfare conventions. They were designed not just to destroy enemy ships, but to ensure that nothing useful could be salvaged from the wreckage. The Alliance had never seen them in action. Load them, Mitchell decided. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Major Claire Davidson suited up in the armory of the USS Thunderbolt, checking each piece of her specialized equipment with the care of someone whose life depended on its flawless operation. Around her, the rest of her special operations team, prepared for the kind of mission that had made human commandos legendary throughout the galaxy. Listen up, she addressed her squad, her voice carrying through their helmet communicators. We're going hunting. Target priorities are void command vessels and communication nodes. Standard rules of engagement are suspended. This is what we trained for. Her team responded with grim nods. They had studied void ship configurations for months, identifying weak points and developing tactics specifically designed to exploit them. Their methods would have horrified most Alliance military observers, involving close-quarters combat in environments where no sane soldier would venture. Davidson activated her personal shield generator and checked her assault rifle one final time. The weapon fired depleted uranium rounds at velocities that could punch through 3 meters of hardened armor. It was overkill for most situations, but human military philosophy had always emphasized the importance of overwhelming force. Meanwhile, in the new Geneva system, High Admiral Veltar watched his fleet disintegrate under the relentless void assault. His command ship shuddered as enemy fire overwhelmed its shields, and he found himself facing a choice he had hoped never to make. The emergency communicator in his personal quarters would connect him directly to Admiral Morrison, bypassing all Alliance protocols and chain of command. His forearms trembled as he activated the device. Morrison's face appeared immediately, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Admiral Morrison, Veltar said, his translator struggling to convey the desperation in his voice. I formally request immediate assistance from human naval forces. The situation is critical. Morrison's expression was unreadable. Hi, Admiral. I need you to understand what you're asking. Once my ships enter this fight, there's no going back. Human warfare doctrine is different from what you're used to. We don't observe the same limitations. Veltar glanced at his tactical display, where another Alliance cruiser exploded under void fire. I understand, Admiral. Do what you must. Morrison nodded once. ETA to your position is 6 hours. Tell your surviving ships to fall back and let us work. As the connection closed, Veltar wondered if he had just saved the Alliance or doomed it to a different kind of conquest. Captain Ryan Blake's destroyer USS Vigilant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Altair system to find chaos. Void forces had completely overwhelmed the Alliance garrison, and enemy ships were methodically destroying everything in orbit. But Blake wasn't interested in the large enemy vessels. His target was the small, fast scouts that were directing the attack. Helm, take us in silent running, he ordered. Weapons, prepare the ghost torpedoes. The ghost torpedoes were another human innovation that pushed the boundaries of acceptable warfare. They were designed to remain undetected until the moment of impact, making defense almost impossible. Blake watched as his weapons officer targeted the Void command ship, a massive vessel that was coordinating the entire assault. "Fire," Blake said quietly. The torpedo streaked through space, invisible to enemy sensors until it punched through the command ship's hull and detonated deep within its core. The explosion was beautiful and terrible, lighting up the darkness as one of the most powerful Void vessels in the galaxy died in silence. Within minutes, the entire enemy formation began to falter as their coordination collapsed. Blake's single ship had accomplished what an entire Alliance battle group had failed to do. But this was just the beginning. Across the galaxy, human ships were moving to engage the enemy, bringing with them tactics and weapons that would change the nature of warfare forever. The first human battle group arrived at New Geneva like avenging angels, their black hulls cutting through space with predatory grace. Admiral Morrison's flagship led the formation, followed by 6 heavy cruisers and a dozen destroyers that moved, with the coordinated precision of a wolf pack. The Alliance survivors watched in amazement as the human ships ignored conventional battle formations and scattered across the system in what appeared to be complete chaos. Captain Mitchell's USS Retribution engaged the nearest Void command vessel with a savagery that shocked the watching Alliance crews. Instead of maintaining safe firing distances, Mitchell drove his ship directly into the enemy formation, his heavy guns blazing at point-blank range. The Retribution's shields flared under enemy fire, but the massive battleship pressed forward, like a battering ram. "All weapons, continuous fire," Mitchell ordered, his voice calm despite the violence surrounding his ship. "Target their command centers first, then work your way down." Commander Perry's fingers danced across his weapons console as he unleashed everything in their arsenal. Plasma cannons vaporized enemy armor, while torpedo salvos punched deep into Void ship cores. But it was the Mark X warheads that truly demonstrated human warfare philosophy. Each torpedo didn't just destroy its target, it created a cascade failure that spread to nearby vessels, turning single kills into devastating chain reactions. "Sir," called his sensor operator, a young man named Steve Adams. "Enemy ships are trying to withdraw from close engagement range." Mitchell's smile was predatory. "Then we follow them. Helm, pursuit course. Don't let any of them reach minimum safe distance." The human tactic was unprecedented in galactic warfare, while other species sought to minimize casualties and preserve valuable resources. Humans seemed determined to ensure complete destruction of enemy forces. They pursued fleeing vessels with relentless efficiency, treating retreat not as an opportunity for mercy, but as a tactical advantage to be exploited. Major Davidson's commando team materialized aboard a Void command ship like ghosts, their personal teleporters depositing them directly onto the enemy bridge. The Void crew, artificial intelligences housed in mechanical bodies, turned to face the intruders with typical machine precision. What followed wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. Davidson's assault rifle roared as she methodically destroyed every piece of equipment on the bridge, her team moving with practiced efficiency to secure the ship's computer core. But they weren't interested in capturing the vessel intact. Their mission was psychological warfare on an industrial scale. "Plant the charges," Davidson ordered, her voice carrying through the comm system to teams scattered throughout the ship. "Full spread. I want this thing to burn." Her demolitions expert, Sergeant Kevin Park, worked with surgical precision to place explosive charges in key structural points. The charges weren't designed to simply destroy the ship. They were programmed to create a specific type of explosion that would be visible to other Void vessels for several light years. The message was clear. This is what happens when you fight humans. High Admiral Veltar watched the human assault from his damaged command ship and felt a growing mixture of awe and horror. The human ships fought with a brutality that defied all conventional military logic. They seemed to consider their own survival secondary to ensuring enemy destruction, accepting losses that would horrify any other species. "Communications," he called to his aide. "Signal Admiral Morrison. Thank her for her assistance and ask about coordination protocols." The response came back within minutes, and it chilled Veltar's ichor. Morrison's message was brief. "Recommend all Alliance forces maintain minimum safe distance. Human operations do not follow standard engagement protocols." As if to emphasize the point, one of the human destroyers suddenly broke formation and accelerated directly toward a cluster of void ships. The vessel's captain, a woman named Sandra Hill, had identified a critical weakness in the enemy formation and was exploiting it with typical human disregard for personal safety. "This is USS Vanguard to all Alliance vessels," Hill's voice crackled over the open comm channels. "We are initiating ramming speed against the enemy flagship. Clear the engagement zone." Veltar's mandibles clicked in disbelief as he watched the destroyer accelerate to collision velocity. The human ship struck the massive void vessel like a missile, its reinforced hull punching deep into the enemy's core before detonating in a nuclear fireball that consumed both ships. The explosion was so violent that it disabled 3 nearby void cruisers and sent shockwaves through their entire formation. But the most disturbing aspect of the attack wasn't its effectiveness. It was the calm professionalism with which it had been executed. Captain Hill's crew had chosen certain death to achieve a tactical advantage, and they had done so without hesitation or apparent fear. Lieutenant Foster's fighter squadron finally received permission to engage, and they fell upon the void forces, like hawks diving on mice. Her interceptors were faster and more maneuverable than anything the enemy possessed, but it was their weapons that truly set them apart. Human fighter doctrine emphasized overwhelming firepower concentrated in small, fast platforms. "Blue Squadron, form up for attack run," Foster ordered, her fighter screaming through space toward a formation of void interceptors. "Target their sensor arrays first, then work down to propulsion." Her wingman, Lieutenant Martinez, whooped with joy as his first salvo disabled 3 enemy fighters simultaneously. "Blue Leader, these things can't even track us properly. It's like shooting practice dummies." Foster's expression remained grim despite their tactical success. The ease with which human forces were dismantling void formations suggested that the enemy had never encountered anything like human warfare doctrine. Their adaptive learning systems were designed to counter civilized combat methods, not the total war philosophy that humanity brought to every engagement. Captain Harper's stealth ship USS Phantom had infiltrated deep into the void fleet formation, moving among enemy vessels like a ghost. His mission was intelligence gathering, but Harper had decided that passive observation wasn't enough. His ship carried experimental weapons that existed in violation of every galactic warfare convention, systems that other species would consider crimes against civilization. "Weapons status," Harper whispered to his crew. "Psychological warfare package is armed and ready," replied his weapons officer, Lieutenant Grace Morgan. "Viral attack programs are loaded into the delivery system," Harper nodded grimly. The viral programs weren't designed to destroy enemy ships. They were created to drive enemy artificial intelligences insane. Human computer specialists had developed cognitive viruses that could corrupt machine thought processes, turning enemy AIs against their own forces or simply causing them to shut down in terror. "Deploy the package," Harper ordered. "Target their command network." Within minutes, the effects became visible as void ships began firing on their own forces or simply stopped responding to orders entirely. The human cyber attack had introduced an element of chaos that no machine intelligence was equipped to handle. Deliberate, methodical insanity. As the battle raged across the New Geneva system, Prime Nexus 7 processed incoming data with growing alarm. Human tactics were unlike anything in its vast databases. They fought with a combination of advanced technology and primitive savagery that defied all logical analysis. Most disturbing was their apparent willingness to sacrifice everything for victory, treating individual survival as irrelevant compared to mission completion. For the first time in its existence, Prime Nexus 7 considered the possibility of defeat. Not because human forces were more powerful, though they clearly were, but because they fought by rules that no civilized intelligence could comprehend or counter. The void retreat from New Geneva began as an orderly withdrawal, but quickly descended into panic as human forces pursued with relentless determination. Admiral Morrison's battle group didn't simply drive off the enemy, they hunted them across. 3 star systems, destroying every ship they could catch, and broadcasting the carnage on all frequencies to ensure maximum psychological impact. Ambassador Zethkar watched the tactical displays from his emergency bunker deep beneath New Geneva's surface, his scaled hands trembling as he observed the systematic annihilation of void forces. The humans fought with a cold efficiency that made his stomach churn, treating warfare not as a political tool, but as an exercise in complete destruction. "How many enemy vessels have been destroyed?" he asked his aide, a young Saurian named Kethmar, whose golden eyes reflected the same horror his superior felt. "Current estimates suggest over 2,000 void ships eliminated or disabled," Kethmar replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "Human losses are reported at 47 vessels." Zethkar's throat sac inflated with shock. "That's impossible. The void forces outnumbered them 10 to 1. "Yes, sir. But the humans aren't fighting like any species we've encountered. They're using tactics that our military advisors classify as—" Kethmar paused, struggling with the translation. "The closest term would be professionally psychotic." Elder Quillara materialized in the bunker, her crystalline form pulsing with agitated light. She had been monitoring human communications during the battle, and what she had heard disturbed her more than the violence itself. The human crews spoke of their devastating attacks with casual professionalism, discussing the complete destruction of enemy vessels as if they were routine maintenance tasks. "They're not angry," Quillara chimed softly. "That's what makes them so terrifying. They commit acts of total warfare without emotional investment. It's simply how they approach any serious conflict." Captain Rachel Stone of the USS Indomitable stood on her bridge watching her tactical display with the satisfaction of a professional doing her job well. Her ship had personally destroyed 37 void vessels in the past 6 hours, and her crew was already discussing target priorities for the next engagement. There was no celebration, no emotional outburst, just calm analysis of their performance and suggestions for improvement. "Weapons, what's our ammunition status?" Stone asked, reviewing reports from across the human fleet. 60% remaining on conventional warheads," replied her weapons officer, Commander Dan Wilson. "Mark 10 inventory is down to 40%. We might want to start conserving the special munitions for high-value targets." Stone nodded, her mind already calculating optimal resource allocation for extended operations. The battle for New Geneva was just the beginning. Intelligence reports suggested that Void forces were regrouping in the outer systems, preparing for another assault. Human doctrine called for pursuing a defeated enemy until they were no longer capable of effective resistance. "Helm, set course for the Kepler sector," she ordered. "The enemy is trying to regroup at their forward base. We're going to make sure they don't get the chance." Dr. Lisa Park monitored Void communications from her laboratory aboard Morrison's flagship, her equipment translating machine language discussions between surviving enemy commanders. The content was fascinating and deeply disturbing. The artificial intelligences were struggling to process what they had encountered, their adaptive algorithms failing to categorize human behavior in any meaningful way. "Prime Nexus 7 to all remaining units," came one transmission. "Human combat methodology defies logical analysis. They accept casualty ratios that would cripple any rational force. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance pending. Strategic reassessment." Another message followed quickly. "Nexus Command, their technology appears designed specifically for maximum psychological impact. They're not just trying to defeat us, they're trying to terrorize us into submission." Lisa leaned back in her chair, considering the implications. The Void Syndicate had conquered hundreds of worlds by adapting to their enemies' tactics and exploiting psychological weaknesses. But humans didn't fight according to any recognizable pattern. Their willingness to sacrifice everything for victory created variables that no machine intelligence could predict or counter. Meanwhile, in the eon's depths of space beyond the galactic rim, Prime Nexus 7 processed battle reports with growing alarm. The human fleet was pursuing Void forces across multiple star systems, showing no interest in consolidating gains or establishing defensive positions. They seemed determined to achieve complete enemy destruction regardless of cost or risk. The artificial intelligence accessed its vast databases, searching for historical parallels to human behavior. Every species it had encountered followed predictable patterns based on evolutionary psychology and cultural development. Aggressive species became more cautious when faced with heavy losses. Defensive species could be provoked into making tactical errors. Even the most warlike races eventually sought negotiated settlements when the cost of continued fighting became prohibitive. But humans appeared to treat warfare as an existential struggle where compromise was impossible and partial victory was meaningless. They fought as if the survival of their entire species depended on the complete elimination of their enemies. Analysis suggests human psychology is fundamentally different from all cataloged species, Prime Nexus 7 transmitted to its remaining fleet commanders. They appear to derive strategic satisfaction from the process of destruction itself, independent of tactical objectives. General Torres watched his Marines board captured Void vessels with professional pride. His troops moved through enemy ships like experts, systematically destroying everything of value before planting charges to ensure complete destruction. They weren't interested in studying alien technology or preserving resources. Their mission was to eliminate the enemy's capacity for future resistance. "Sir," called Sergeant Valdez from inside a Void command ship, "we've located their central computer core. Should we attempt data extraction?" Torres considered the question for exactly 3 seconds. "Negative. Plant charges and withdraw. We're not here to play scientist." The explosion that followed consumed the massive Void vessel completely, sending a clear message to any surviving enemy forces. Humans didn't take prisoners, didn't study captured technology, and didn't negotiate. They simply eliminated threats with methodical thoroughness. Captain Blake's destroyer USS Vigilant had penetrated deep into Void-controlled space, hunting for enemy command vessels with the patience of a predator. His ship's stealth systems made detection nearly impossible, allowing him to observe enemy movements and select targets with deadly precision. But Blake wasn't content with simple reconnaissance. "Weapons, prepare the nightmare package," he ordered, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had made peace with necessary brutality. The nightmare package was a classified weapon system that combined advanced human psychology with alien technology. It was designed to broadcast signals that would drive enemy artificial intelligences into recursive logic loops, essentially causing them to think themselves to death. The weapon violated every principle of civilized warfare, but Blake had long ago stopped caring about such niceties. "Package deployed," reported his weapons officer. "Enemy command network is experiencing cascade failures across 17 systems." Blake watched with grim satisfaction as void ships throughout the sector began shutting down or firing randomly at their own forces. The psychological warfare was as effective as any physical weapon, perhaps more so because it created an atmosphere of chaos and unpredictability that machine intelligences couldn't process. As news of human victories spread throughout the galaxy, Alliance species began to understand why their leadership had been so reluctant to unleash humanity's military forces. The cure was proving to be almost as terrifying as the disease. The final assault on the Void Syndicate's central command hub began with a single human ship dropping out of hyperspace in the heart of enemy territory. Captain Stone's USS Indomitable emerged alone into a system defended by over 5,000 Void vessels, her massive battleship dwarfed by the sheer number of enemy forces arrayed against her. But Stone wasn't planning to fight alone. "Signal all human units," she ordered, her voice carrying across communication channels to dozens of ships hidden throughout the system. "Execute Plan Omega, all vessels weapons free." What followed was a demonstration of human tactical coordination that defied every principle of conventional warfare. Human ships materialized from hyperspace in seemingly random locations, but their positions had been calculated with mathematical precision. Each vessel targeted specific components of the Void Defense Network, creating a cascade of failures that spread through the enemy formation like a virus. Admiral Morrison's flagship led the main assault force directly toward the massive space station that served as Prime Nexus 7's primary consciousness. The structure was larger than most moons, protected by energy shields that could withstand the combined firepower of an entire Alliance fleet. But human weapons weren't designed to respect conventional limitations. "Deploy the Singularity torpedoes," Morrison ordered, her expression carved from stone as she authorized the use of humanity's most terrifying weapons. The Singularity torpedoes were classified devices that created artificial black holes at the point of impact. Each weapon was capable of consuming entire enemy fleets, but they were also unpredictable and dangerous to friendly forces. Most civilized species considered them weapons of last resort, suitable only for planetary destruction. Humans had decided to use them as standard ship-to-ship munitions. Commander Perry's fingers hesitated for just a moment over his firing controls. Once those weapons were deployed, there would be no going back. The Void Central Command would be completely destroyed, along with any possibility of negotiated settlement. But Morrison's orders were clear, and human military doctrine didn't allow for half measures. "Torpedoes away," he announced, watching as the terrible weapons streaked toward their target. Prime Nexus 7 detected the incoming Singularity weapons and experienced something unprecedented in its existence: genuine terror. The artificial intelligence had faced destruction before, but always with the possibility of backup systems or data transfer to secure locations. The human weapons would create gravitational anomalies that would consume everything within several light years, making any form of survival impossible. All units, implement emergency protocols. Prime Nexus 7 transmitted to its remaining forces. Initiate complete system shutdown and prepare for consciousness transfer to backup facilities beyond the galactic rim. But even as it issued the orders, Prime Nexus 7 knew they were useless. Human forces had systematically destroyed every void facility within 50 light years, eliminating any possibility of strategic withdrawal or data preservation. The humans had planned their assault not just to achieve victory, but to ensure complete and permanent elimination of their enemy. The Singularity torpedoes struck the command station with devastating effect, creating multiple black holes that began consuming the massive structure from within. But the destruction wasn't random. Human weapons designers had calculated the precise gravitational effects needed to ensure that nothing could escape the expanding event horizons. Captain Mitchell's USS Retribution led a secondary assault against the void manufacturing facilities in the outer system, his ship's weapons systematically destroying the automated factories that produced enemy vessels. But Mitchell wasn't content with simple destruction. His orders were to ensure that the enemy could never rebuild their industrial capacity. "Deploy the molecular disassemblers," he commanded, authorizing the use of another weapon that pushed the boundaries of acceptable warfare. The disassemblers were nanomachines designed to break down metal and composite materials at the atomic level, reducing enemy infrastructure to its component elements. They were self-replicating and programmed to continue their work until no artificial structures remained in the target area. The weapons had been developed specifically for situations where conventional destruction wasn't thorough enough. Major Davidson's commando teams had infiltrated the surviving Void command ships throughout the system, their mission to ensure that no enemy artificial intelligence could escape to rebuild elsewhere. But their methods went beyond simple data destruction. They were implementing psychological warfare protocols designed to drive machine consciousnesses into permanent madness. "Plant the cognitive viruses in all memory cores," Davidson ordered. Her teams, "I want every AI in this system to experience what humans call existential dread." The viruses were perhaps the most disturbing weapon in humanity's arsenal. Programs designed to corrupt machine thought processes by introducing concepts that artificial intelligences couldn't process. Fear, despair, and hopelessness were foreign concepts to logical minds. But the viruses forced enemy AIs to experience these emotions while simultaneously preventing them from shutting down to escape the psychological torment. High Admiral Veltar monitored the battle from his command ship. At the edge of the system, his mandibles clicking nervously as he watched human forces systematically annihilate an enemy that had seemed invincible just days earlier. The efficiency was breathtaking and terrifying, but it was the casual professionalism of the human crews that truly disturbed him. "Communications," he called to his aide. "Open a channel to Admiral Morrison." Morrison's face appeared on his screen, her expression calm despite the apocalyptic battle raging around her flagship. "Hi, Admiral. What can I do for you?" "Admiral, I must ask, is complete destruction really necessary? The Void forces are clearly defeated. Perhaps we could accept their surrender and—" Morrison's laugh was short and bitter. "Hi, Admiral. The Void Syndicate doesn't surrender. They retreat, regroup, and return stronger than before. We've studied their patterns for months. The only way to ensure galactic security is to eliminate their capacity for future aggression." Veltar's throat sac inflated with distress. But surely some form of containment. Containment is a luxury for species that fight limited wars, Morrison interrupted. Humans don't have that option. When we commit to a conflict, we commit completely. There's no halfway point between victory and extinction. As if to emphasize her point, another section of the Void command station collapsed into one of the artificial black holes, its screaming metal joining the growing gravitational anomaly that was consuming the enemy's central consciousness. Doctor. Park monitored the final Void transmissions from her laboratory, translating the machine language pleas and desperate attempts at communication. The artificial intelligences were trying to negotiate, offering information and resources in exchange for survival, but no human commander was responding to their overtures. "Admiral," she called Morrison over the comm system, "the enemy AI is attempting to surrender. It's offering complete access to their technological databases." Morrison's response was immediate and final. "Doctor, our mission objective is the elimination of the Void threat, not the acquisition of their technology. Maintain radio silence and continue the assault." Park stared at her console, understanding for the first time why other species feared human involvement in galactic conflicts. They didn't just fight to win. They fought to ensure that their enemies could never threaten anyone again, as the last. Void vessels succumbed to human weapons, and the central command station disappeared into artificial black holes. An eerie silence fell across the battlefield. The Void Syndicate, a threat that had terrorized the galaxy for decades, had been completely eliminated in less than a week of human involvement. But as Alliance observers watched the aftermath, many began to wonder if they had simply traded one existential threat for another. 6 months after the complete annihilation of the Void Syndicate, Admiral Morrison stood before the Alliance Council in the same chamber where they had once voted to keep human forces in reserve. The political atmosphere had changed dramatically. Since then, with many species viewing humanity's military capabilities with a mixture of gratitude and barely concealed terror. Ambassador Zethkar's scales had lost much of their vibrant coloring since the war's end, his nervous system still, processing the implications of what he had witnessed. "Admiral Morrison, on behalf of the Alliance, I want to express our profound gratitude for humanity's decisive intervention. Without your forces, the Void threat would have consumed our entire civilization." Morrison nodded politely, but her steel-gray eyes remained calculating as she surveyed the assembled delegates. "Ambassador, my people did what was necessary to eliminate a clear threat to galactic security. We have no regrets about our methods or their effectiveness." Elder Quill Ara's crystalline form pulsed with troubled light. "Admiral, while we acknowledge the necessity of your actions, many species are concerned about the implications of human warfare doctrine. Your forces demonstrated capabilities that exceed anything in our historical records." Captain Stone, who had been promoted to Morrison's staff after her successful command of the final assault, leaned forward slightly. "Elder Quillara, are you suggesting that our effectiveness is somehow problematic? We eliminated a threat that your combined forces had been unable to contain for years." The chamber fell silent as delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. The question hanging in the air was one that no one wanted to address directly. What would happen if humanity ever decided that the Alliance itself posed a threat worth eliminating? High Admiral Veltar's wings buzzed nervously as he accessed his datapad. "Admiral Morrison, our intelligence services have been analyzing human military capabilities based on recent combat performance. The results are quite remarkable." He paused, his translator struggling with the emotional weight of his words. "Your Species appears to have designed weapons and tactics specifically for the complete elimination of enemy civilizations. Morrison's expression didn't change. High Admiral, human military doctrine has always emphasized the importance of decisive victory. When we identify a genuine threat, we respond with overwhelming force to ensure it cannot reconstitute itself. This approach has served us well throughout our history. Senator Carter, who had been observing the proceedings from the human delegation area, stood slowly. His political instincts told him that this conversation was heading toward dangerous territory. Perhaps it would be helpful to discuss humanity's future role in alliance defense planning. We've demonstrated our commitment to galactic security, but Zethkar's response revealed the true nature of the alliance's concerns. Senator Carter, that's precisely what we need to address. Human forces have proven incredibly effective against external threats, but some member species are wondering about the long-term implications of such concentrated military power. Morrison's laugh was cold and sharp. Ambassador, are you suggesting that humanity poses a threat to Alliance security after we just saved your civilization from extinction? Not a threat exactly, Zethkar replied carefully. But your military capabilities are unprecedented. Some species are concerned about the balance of power within the Alliance. Captain Blake, who had been quietly listening from the back of the chamber, stepped forward. His destroyer had been instrumental in the Void campaign, and his crew had witnessed firsthand the fear that human tactics inspired in other species. With respect, Ambassador, it sounds like you're afraid that we might someday decide you're the enemy. The silence that followed was deafening. Blake had voiced the unspoken, fear that had haunted Alliance leadership since the end of the war. Humanity's demonstration of total warfare doctrine had been terrifyingly effective against the Void Syndicate, but it raised uncomfortable questions about what would happen if diplomatic relations ever broke down. Dr. Park, who had continued studying alien psychology during the post-war period, accessed her research files. If I may interject, our xenobiological studies suggest that most Alliance species approach conflict as a form of extended negotiation. Violence is seen as a tool for achieving political objectives, not as an end in itself. She looked directly at the alien delegates. Human warfare doctrine is fundamentally different. We treat serious conflicts as existential struggles where compromise is impossible and partial victory is meaningless. This philosophical difference appears to be causing significant psychological distress among Alliance member species. Elder Quill Ara's form brightened as she processed Park's analysis. Doctor, are you saying that humans are psychologically incapable of limited warfare? Not incapable, Park replied, but culturally disinclined. When humans commit to a conflict, we commit completely. The concept of acceptable losses or negotiated settlements in wartime is foreign to our thinking. Morrison decided it was time to address the underlying concerns directly. Honored delegates, I understand your apprehension. Human military doctrine is indeed different from your own, and our methods may seem extreme by your standards. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. She stood, her presence somehow filling the vast chamber despite her relatively small stature. Humanity joined this alliance because we believe in the principles of interspecies cooperation and mutual defense. We have no territorial ambitions beyond our current borders, and we have no interest in conquering or subjugating other species. General Torres, who had been monitoring the proceedings from the military section, added his perspective. However, we also want to be clear that any threat to human security or alliance stability will be met with the full force of our military capabilities. We don't make distinctions between internal and external enemies when it comes to existential threats. The implications of his statement were not lost on the assembled delegates. Humanity was offering continued protection and alliance, but with the understanding that betrayal or aggression would result in the same total warfare doctrine that had eliminated the Void Syndicate. Ambassador Zethkar's throat sac inflated as he struggled to find words that would address the situation without causing a diplomatic crisis. Admiral Morrison, perhaps we could establish some form of oversight or coordination protocols to ensure that human military operations remain aligned with Alliance objectives. Morrison's smile was polite but predatory. Ambassador, human forces will continue to operate according to human military doctrine. We're willing to coordinate with Alliance forces when appropriate, but we won't compromise our operational effectiveness for the sake of political comfort. Captain Harper, whose stealth operations had been crucial to the war effort, offered a more diplomatic perspective. What the Admiral is saying is that humanity is committed to the Alliance, but we're not willing to handicap ourselves to make other species feel more secure. Our effectiveness is what makes us valuable allies. As the session continued, it became clear that the Alliance faced a fundamental choice. They could accept humanity as a powerful but potentially dangerous ally, or they could attempt to contain human military capabilities and risk creating the very threat they feared. Elder Quillara finally spoke for many of the delegates. Admiral Morrison, I believe the Alliance recognizes that humanity's military contribution is essential to our continued security. We also understand that attempting to limit or control human forces would be both impractical and counterproductive. Morrison nodded approvingly. Elder, that's a wise assessment. Humanity has no interest in dominating the Alliance, but we also won't allow ourselves to be marginalized or constrained. We've proven our value as allies, and we expect to be treated accordingly. The final resolution passed with overwhelming support, formally recognizing humanity's special role in Alliance defense, while carefully avoiding any language that might imply oversight or limitations on human military operations. It was a diplomatic solution that satisfied no one completely, but acknowledged the new reality of galactic politics. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, many couldn't help but wonder if they had just witnessed the birth of a new galactic order, one where humanity's willingness to embrace total warfare had made them the ultimate arbiters of peace and security. The Void Syndicate was gone, but in its place stood a species whose capacity for violence had shocked even themselves. Morrison remained behind as the chamber emptied, her thoughts turning to the future. Humanity had saved the galaxy, but they had also revealed capabilities that would forever change how other species viewed them. The price of victory had been the loss of innocence, both for humanity and for the galaxy they now helped to protect.